Hello everyone and welcome to another video. A question that I get surprisingly often is how much you can charge for your toilets. I almost never charge for toilets myself, but it is still an interesting question, so I decided to give in to your demands. This video is based on Dirklink's guide to shop prices, link in the description. Before we start, I want to say something about my videos in general. I put a lot of work into my videos, but that does not mean at all that I make no mistakes. For example, in my log flume overview I had the drop height TET requirement wrong and I did not talk about how slow the chain lifts are. Most of these are my fault, like the slow chain lift that I just forgot about, but a few aren't my fault, like the drop height requirement, which was a bug in RCT2 that now has been fixed. Almost always there are some great people in the comments who point out my mistakes and omissions, and if there's a big thing I'll often pin a comment about it. If you want to be sure that you have as much correct information as possible, it's a good idea to read the comments on my videos. I also want to thank the people who point out those mistakes in a polite manner, because with your help we minimize the amount of misinformation. Now that that's done, let's get on with the video. First, let's talk about the toilet stat, which is represented by the bottom bar in this window. If it is empty, it has a value of 0, and if it is full, it has a value of 255. This value increases slowly over time when a guest is in a park and faster when they are drinking something. If this value is 70 or higher, which is about 27.5%, guests will want to go to the bathroom. When they get to the bathroom, they will see the price and then determine if they need to go badly enough to pay that price. There is a very simple formula that we can use to determine the maximum price that guests will pay. If you want the exact math, you can read Dirklink's guide, but it simplifies to this. The maximum price they want to pay in cents is their toilet value divided by 4 and then round it down to the nearest interval of 10 cents. Let's use two examples to see this in action. First, the minimum value for which they will go to the bathroom, which is 70. 70 divided by 4 is 17.5. This is quite close to 20, but we need to round down, so the maximum price that they want to pay is 10 cents. The next example is the maximum value. 255 divided by 4 is 63.75, which rounds down to 60 cents. This means that guests are always willing to pay at least 10 cents, while they never want to pay more than 60 cents. To determine the optimal price, let's look at what percentage of guests is willing to pay for each possible price between 10 and 60 cents. Here is a table. In the left column is the toilet price, in the middle column is the minimum toilet value guests need to be willing to pay that price, and in the column on the right is the percentage of guests that will want to pay it. This percentage column is based on the assumption that all toilet values are equally likely. This is probably not true, but it's the best I can do, and I think that the conclusion will be the same. As we've already seen, 100% of the guests will pay 10 cents. 20 cents is not far behind at 94.6%, as only the guests with a toilet value between 70 and 80 will not want to pay it. This number continues to go down the more expensive you make your bathrooms, all the way down to only 8.1% if you charge 60 cents, as only the guests with a toilet value between 240 and the maximum of 255 will want to pay that price. The question now becomes, at which price do you make the most money? To determine this, we simply multiply the price with the percentage of guests that are willing to pay it. To get some numbers that are easier to work with, I will multiply this by 1000 so that we can get the money made per 1000 guests. Here are the results. If you charge 10 cents, everyone will pay, so you make €100 for every 1000 guests. If you charge 20 cents, still almost everyone will pay and they will pay twice as much, so you make almost twice as much. With 30 cents you make a bit more even still, but after that it goes down. You may charge more, but so few guests are paying that you end up with less money in the end. Before we make conclusions on what the best price is, we first need to know what happens if a guest thinks that a bathroom is too expensive. Well, firstly, they obviously won't go to the bathroom, but their happiness value is also reduced by 16. Just like the toilet value, this ranges from 0 to 255, so it is reduced by about 6.3% of the maximum value. If their happiness is at 60 or lower, it won't be reduced, presumably because they are already too pissed off to be further annoyed by a full bladder. Because their bladder is still full, they might try to go to the toilet again, so this happiness reduction can happen multiple times. As far as I know, a lower happiness value has two main effects. Unhappy guests lower the park rating and are more quick to leave the park. Let's see if the little bit of extra unhappiness has any noticeable influence on that. To test this, I let Six Flags Holland run for 3 years, once with free toilets, once with 40-cent toilet and once with 70-cent toilets that are too expensive for everyone. The number of guests at the end was very similar for free and 40-cent toilets and slightly lower for 70-cent toilets. The park rating didn't seem to be different between the three. From this, I conclude that unless your toilets are so expensive that no one can afford them, the negative effects from guests not wanting to pay are negligible. Even with toilets that are too expensive, the effects are still quite small. Even though the negative effects from high prices are small to negligible, we can still dismiss all prices above 30 cents as we simply make less money. Anything below 30 cents is reasonable if you don't like turning guests away or if all your guests are broke, but from this analysis I would say that 30 cents seems to be the most optimal price. Before we conclude that 30 cents is indeed the best price, let's actually test it in a scenario. For this test I let the same Six Flags Holland park run for 2 years and checked how much I had made from toilets after those 2 years. I did this for all 6 possible toilet prices, and to get a larger sample size I did it 3 times per price and then took the average. Here are the results. As you can see, we made the most money when we charged 40 cents. This is not in line with the calculations from earlier. What could be the cause of this difference? I think the main cause is that guests that don't go because it's too expensive don't lose their toilet value. Let me explain. Let's say we charge 20 cents. As soon as a guest has a toilet value of 80, they go to the toilet and we have made 20 cents. A while later the toilet value has reached 80 again and we make another 20 cents. In total we have now made 40 cents. Now let's say that we charge 40 cents instead. This time the guest won't go the first time, so the toilet value stays at 80. After the same while it has increased from 80 to 160. Now the guest will pay and we have still made 40 cents in the same time span. The reason we make more when we charge 40 cents and not the same is that we don't undercharge guests who need to go quite badly anymore. Basically, we don't lose money on the guests that only need to go slightly because they will need to go badly enough later, and we make more money on guests that attempt to go to the toilet for the first time when they already need to go quite badly. You can actually see this in action quite clearly when we charge the highest price of 60 cents. In the first month, all the guests that already have a high toilet value go, making us a lot of money. After that it goes down drastically as very few guests have a high enough toilet value. A few months later, the toilet value income picks up again, as guests now do have a high enough toilet value to pay the 60 cents. When we look at the results for 20 cents, we don't see this effect. The only thing we do see is a slight steady increase as we get more guests in the park over time. At some point this effect does wear off and the number of guests leaving the park with a full bladder and perhaps other effects do outweigh the extra income. The perfect balance seems to be at 40 cents. So, what is the optimal price to charge for your toilets? Because the negative effects seem to be negligible, I would say that 40 cents is the most optimal price. 30 cents or 20 cents could also be argued to be the best, as they anger fewer guests and it depends on personal preference a bit as well. 50 cents and 60 cents are too expensive and strictly suboptimal. 10 cents or nothing at all could be useful in situations where you have no ATM and absolutely need to keep the guests in your park, but otherwise they are also suboptimal. This was an interesting question because even though charging for your toilets has little effect on your money, we did learn something about how the game works and used some cool math. If you liked this video, consider giving it a like or leave a comment. You can also subscribe or follow me on Twitch. Thank you all for watching and I will see you in the next video.